Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of the Watch Club. We are a product of the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. I am James Sullivan, the program director for the film festival, and I am very excited to welcome you in just a moment to our guests for November, filmmakers Jesse Shortbull and Laura Tomaselli, who are the co-directors of a really incredibly well done new documentary, new to streaming, called Lakota Nation versus United States. For those of you who have not yet gotten around to watching the film but are joining us now, we're just going to go ahead and show the trailer for now, and then we'll when we come back, we will have the filmmakers with us.
I want to tell you about the Sioux uprising, but I don't know where to begin.
At the center of all the treaties the Lakota have signed with the United States government is the Black Hills.
X marks an agreement.
Most tribes have treaties with the federal government, and they're all under the War Department.
And another X marks this land as ours.
This is our Mecca, the most sacred place in the world.
That's why the Black Hills are not for sale, because we're not for sale.
When they illegally took the land from our people, it wasn't just the land itself that was taken. It was part of a process to colonize us. If you can make the people suffer by destroying their economic system and their languages and their culture, then you can try to conquer a people.
As an Indigenous person, as someone who comes from this land, I'm just trying to exist.
Our work here is not just about reclaiming land, but reclaiming power.
We are Lakota, Lakota, and Nakota.
We're the last of the fighters. We held on for so long, and we continue to hold on. We're not going anywhere.
We are fighting for the integrity of our people.
We are building the world that we want to live in.
All this land is Indigenous land.
Please welcome to the Watch Club Jesse Shortbull and Laura Tomaselli. Hello, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, James.
So the first thing I want to say, and you can see it in the trailer, and it certainly stands out as you watch the entire film, it's gorgeous. All of the outdoors footage, sort of scene setting footage that you shot is spectacularly beautiful. And I think the question, my question for you is, was that a conversation that you had? This film has to be sort of breathtakingly beautiful to show the land that, is in dispute, that was taken.
For sure. Yeah, no, and you're right, James. I think Laura and I, when we first had our first face-to-face meeting, and we talked about, how can we enter people's hearts? How can we? Yeah. I think the biggest thing, James, is when you think about Indigenous nations in the United States, there's always a tie to the land, but what does that actually mean? What does a tribe's connection to the land, like, what is that exactly? Mm-hmm. And so I think Laura and I wanted to try and let the land become a character itself, mm-hmm. and let it speak through its own beauty and just the ways that it can through image. And that's really was really intentional on our part, to just try to let people understand how we see the world. And when I say we, I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation.
Mm-hmm.
How try to see beauty in it, and Laura and our director of photography, his name's Kevin. I mean, they did it. They were able to really enhance and bring forth the beauty of the Black Hills and various places in the Dakotas.
Thinking of the landscape as a character, that's great. Can you answer the simple question, which is, so Jesse, you mentioned that the first face-to-face meeting that you had, you discussed this. How did the two of you come together to make this film?
You do the prelude, and then I'll do the parking lot. Yeah.
Well, we met through our producer, Benjamin Hedin.
Yep.
And Laura has worked with Benjamin before, and Benjamin is the person that first approached me about potentially doing something about the treaty or the court case.
Yep.
However, and so, and I will say I was a little hesitant at first, just because the sensitivity around Indigenous stories and the degree of responsibility that's required can be very a pressure-filled type situation.
Yep.
But I think that when I really knew that I was on the cusp of something really special with this project is when Laura sent me a little snippet that she cut, which featured Doris Day in a Western that mentions the Black Hills specifically. And so before we even met face to face, I was just in awe and just captivated by the potential that was forthcoming. And so I kind of had a real good sense that, Laura was going to be fantastic. But, like we still hadn't had our face to face, and, we ended up doing that in Rapid City.
We met for the first time. I was joking about the parking lot because both of us were still heavy smokers at the time, and we probably smoked like a pack of cigarettes between the two of ourselves, talking sort of late after we'd had dinner with our producers about like our hopes, our dreams for the film. And I think one of the things that bound both of us, even though we're on paper hypothetically very different, right? Is we were both really intimidated by doing the story justice, and I think that we felt secure maybe in the fact that the other person was too, and I think that because we both know that we had that care that we wanted to just do the best that we could, I think that propelled us through our partnership and through the project for sure.
And James. And the second I met Laura, I mean, I just knew, and I knew that I was gonna, really enjoy, this venture. And Laura is just so amazing, intuitive, and we really just felt like a hand in the glove when working on this project.
For sure.
Right. So, really important question, Laura. You said you both were heavy smokers. Who quit?
I have a vape. Well, I'm trying to do like that, but yeah. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, I still do. I still do.
We both have goals for the new year, I think. Yeah.
So, Jesse, can you tell us a little bit about your, I'm not sure that I've heard the story yet. I've watched it. I think I mentioned to you before we came on air that I've watched a little bit of interviews with you in other settings or at other festivals. I'm sure you've told the story, but I haven't heard it. And our viewers probably haven't heard it. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and did you know from a very young age some of this history, or did you have to learn it as you got to be a teenager and sort of became curious about more of your background?
Yeah. So I didn't. A lot of this was not known to me. In fact, I really didn't even know of my Indian lineage. I mean, I grew up around my relatives. But I didn't know what my last name meant or where that even came from. The name Short Bowl. How did I even get that? My father was a student. The brutal boarding school period ran through up until the late 60s on both the Rosebud and Pine Ridge reservations. So, and he definitely bore a lot of trauma from that. So he really tried to set, I think, my brother and I up for, success, which was not having too much connection to any indigeneity that he may have possessed.
So he was a boarding school student. He was in one of the boarding schools, right?
Yeah. So, but he grew up. He has a portion of life where prior to boarding school, that he did get a lot of. He learned Lakota language and just some of the day-to-day sort of things on the reservation. But he really went out of his way to kind of keep that from us. So it was a very confusing time, and as a young kid, I was definitely perceptive, and I understood that there was tension between non-native people and native people, and I just could not put my finger or understand it. And school didn't do a whole lot for me. I guess I didn't really pick up a whole lot. I mean, there was a lot of general things, but I think it was when I became a tribal college student at Oglala Lakota College on Pine Ridge, South Dakota, where I started to learn where my name came from. I started to learn how I was connected to the community through my relatives, and I really was on a path of self-discovery. And I also understood, how precious things are. And that's where I kind of first got introduced to the treaty, and I got first introduced to our treaty councils and just some of the many layers that you can find on the reservation, which is a sovereign nation inside a sovereign nation, the United States. So, yeah, I spent probably the last 20 or so years just trying to piece things together. And thankfully, I had some great teachers along the way from the Oglala Nation that helped kind of fill in the gaps that I couldn't quite understand or find access to the information.
Yeah. I'm just going to take a quick moment to say that viewers, if you have a question for the filmmakers, you are more than welcome to pose it. All you got to do is type it up into the chat section of your screen, and if we get a chance, I'll go ahead and pose the question to the filmmakers. So, Laura and Jesse, excuse me. There have been other films about Native issues. I mentioned a short film that we had in our festival this year about Native traditions. I think there was at least one featured length documentary about the Standing Rock demonstration protest. Maybe more, I'm not sure. But your film seemed completely comprehensive to me. It has the history, it has the, how it relates to the Standing Rock protest. It has the spirituality that we just kind of already discussed a little bit about the connection to the land. In what way did you, if you had the conversation about the land, you probably also had this conversation. How did you, how did you talk to each other about what was going to make this film different?
First off, I think, it is a little frustrating because, a lot of indigenous nations, and especially like Pine Ridge, Rosebud, we have a lot of creativity, and storytelling is a very important role. But yet it's very difficult for any story that isn't too immersed in the current challenges that are facing indigenous nations. It's difficult to try to get something on a scale that people will try to watch it and learn. And I think that, and I'll let Laura talk about this, how the condensing of the history was probably very challenging for us. Well, it was very challenging for us. But what I'll say is, and that I'm really proud of, and Laura really brought so much to the pace and the tone that I have been amazed how, very young children, up until elderly people, it's able to keep, attention spans even through 2 hours, which can be kind of a challenging thing in its own right. And I think that that's something that, we both pride ourselves on. And Laura just was amazing as far as hitting all of those notes. And yeah, but it was difficult.
Laura, I'll let you respond too, but I think tone is the exact right word, Jesse, because of course the film is solemn, and of course it, sort of inspires outrage, as it should. But it also does definitely have like sort of roll your eyes moments about like sort of the popular culture images of history, Buster Keaton and the cartoons and all that stuff. And, and all of which sort of helps, bring together the history while also serving as sort of like a little bit of like a, momentary pause for levity or whatever. Laura, go ahead and respond if you can.
I think that's a great observation. I think I could speak about this for several hours. No, I think that one of the things, when we started making this, and I'm stealing this from Jesse, but he says this so well, which is that I think it's a film, but it's also an argument, and we hope it's a tool to both educate, but also, it's something that we hope sets in motion justice. And so I think it was about threading the needle of storytelling within 2 hours when you're talking about over 500 years of history, which is always tough. But I think it goes to also what you're saying about those moments of levity, which is you're talking about exposition, what exposition is necessary, and then can we get viewers to a moment where they look at a clip that they've maybe seen before with that new context and give them the space to come to that conclusion that it's ridiculous themselves.
Yeah.
I think that it's obvious where we stand on a lot of different, it's obvious what our position is in a lot of different things in making this movie. But giving viewers space to be like, that is goofy, or I am outraged at that was definitely something that we hope to do. So
yeah, for sure. And I want to ask about a couple of things that are sort of themes that run through the film. One being Mount Rushmore, which is probably incredibly obvious to you, Jesse, coming from the Dakotas, and the other being the buffalo. And obviously Ken Burns just made a big long thing about buffalo, but and the fact that we all but killed them off before bringing them back. But in both cases, I think you make it really apparent that most mainstream Americans don't really think of those things in terms of relation to the Native community. People know that Mount Rushmore was created, in the Dakotas on, what was quote unquote formerly Native land. People know the Natives' relationship to the buffalo, but I don't think that it's been made quite as clear as you all did in this film. Both of those things and how they relate to the Native world. Is that something another thing that you discussed or wanted to make absolutely abundantly clear?
That's a wonderful compliment. I think that and we had a much longer section about the buffalo too in there. A lot of it.
I heard that Ken Burns was putting out 4 hours worth of that, right?
Yeah, and we're like, he's got it. We'll keep going. But I think it was being really brutal with these edits and being like, what pushes this story along? I mean, I think it's funny. I had I got to meet a great editor. I'm forgetting her last name, Karen Lampley, I think, at a Sundance edit thing a couple years ago, and she said something that she always edits with this post-it on her computer that says "fuck exposition." And so to me, I always think about that. And it's as an editor and as a former trailer editor, I think about what you can possibly take out without losing meaning. How short can it be without losing meaning?
Yeah.
Mentally. So.
Right. Jesse, do you want to piggyback on that about,
Yeah,
about those two themes about Buffalo and Mount Rushmore in particular, and how important they were to include in this story?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of people have I mean, you'd be surprised how many people still recognize the name Custer,
Mm-hmm.
or still have some sort of idea of who he was and what happened at Little Bighorn.
Right.
But the part that a lot of people don't really realize is and that Mount Rushmore is kind of a big, slap in the face
Yeah.
for Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
Um, and the taking of the Black Hills was a punishment for Little Bighorn, but
Right.
it was an unjust punishment. And so, yeah, no, I mean, I wish people could see that. I know it's hard. It's hard. I mean, we've all heard Shrine of Democracy and the embodiment of the good things about America, but I really want people to understand what was really Mount Rushmore intended to do outside of the things that we know, but it really was a big fu to the tribes for
Yeah.
Little Bighorn.
Your film made me think about a couple of books that I've read over the last few years. The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, which I'm sure you probably used as a resource, and another one that I wrote a book a few years ago about protest music, and that brought me to the book Like a Hurricane, which is about the Indian movement, American Indian movement of the AIM of the 1970s. Both of which I love. I think they're both really great books, and I'm sure you used both of them and many other primary sources as resources for your research. And again, that's kind of goes back to speaking about how you did such a great job of kind of encompassing all of the from the 1800s, or from hundreds of years ago to the 1800s, to the battles then, to the 70s, the AIM movement of the 70s, and then up to Standing Rock. I want to ask you a quick. I mentioned the protest music thing. Couldn't help but notice that you have Floyd Westerman on the soundtrack. Where? So maybe a couple of folks will remember. I mean, he was. I think he put out one album, and then right around 1970, right? Laura, people can't see your sweater, but it says 1970 on it. And then I think disappeared. I actually don't know, but I don't think he really had much of a recording career after that. Do either of you know the story of Floyd Westerman?
I don't know anything after that. No, I felt in deep because we used that song because I think we thought to me that's a celebration. It's a moment before Act 2 when all of the terrible things start happening again. So I thought that was a moment of celebration. I love that song, but I actually don't know anything about Floyd Westerman after you. Yeah.
Well, what I'll say is, I think Floyd drew a lot of influence, like a lot of people did, from the book by the author who wrote the book Custer Died for Your
Yeah, right.
And we feature a clip of him, and his name escapes me off the.
Is that D. Brown?
Vine Deloria, yep.
Oh, right, yeah.
And from what I've heard, of people that I grew up around or were alive during that time, that definitely was kind of the calling card, and I definitely I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Floyd years ago, and actually he gave us a performance in Los Angeles, California.
Wow.
Singing guitar, and he was an amazing man, and he covered a lot of things, that are still active issues on reservations today, like the concept of blood quantum, and how those play a role. And I'm glad that Laura, having the song come in and hearing his voice, and I'm really glad that, and same with some others like Mr. Deloria and John Trudell.
Right.
Having their, they're all, gone now. So having them speak through it, and just from that time, just a real blessing. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Floyd just did an excellent job, and his song you just cannot listen to it and not feel a tug at your heartstrings.
I think it came up right at sort of right at it's kind of at the halfway mark. So it's kind of like literally the centerpiece of the movie. I could talk to you folks for another hour, but you have another interview to do because you are at Doc NYC right now. So we are going to let you do that, and I am going to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Oh, and then I didn't even mention that Laura her parents live in Ipswich. So for those of the local folks in the Newburyport area, there's your Massachusetts plug.
In the supermarket. Yeah. Yell at him in the supermarket. Yeah.
Thanks so much to both of you for taking the time. And we really look forward to seeing what you work on next, either together or separately.
I think both are going to happen. Yeah.
Both are happening.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Great to meet you both.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, James.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll take a quick moment to thank our sponsors, and we'll see you next month in the Watch Club.